Hello, everyone. I believe that I am live. The way this is working is a bit different, so when I go live, I'm trying to do it like right on the minute. Hope everyone is doing well. I know that I may not have mentioned in the last video that I did the date and time, but live streams are usually 8 p.m. Central Standard Time on Thursday nights. There's a couple of things that I want to talk about, one of which is what we discussed in this video this past Wednesday, or guess yesterday, about the ideal of alternate dimensions or a multiverse that Spider-Man explored, as well as I was doing a little bit of research and I saw that some astrologers are looking at February because of Pluto's return and the placement of it being the exact same as when America started. With all that being said, I know that there's a lot going on, so I'm going to go ahead while I wait for everyone to trickle in and jump into the comments from this past video. So, I see 2 here. I thought there were more, but for some reason, let me see if I can get them all up here. There we go. So it looks like a couple are links. Maybe that's why they didn't show initially. But Darina Vasiljevitis, and I'm sorry if I said your name incorrectly, said fantasy, i.e. movie or book, is literally defined as parallel universe. Scientists found a particle in Antarctica that is identical to ours but runs backwards. We used to have a mirror at the clock in an area of work, and once when I looked at it, I felt really strange, dizzy, and intoxicated. God revealed to me that we live in a world of crooked mirrors, where devil distorts reflections, i.e. inner reflections, and because the devil cannot create, he can only copy what's already there and distort it. And for the lie to be believable, it has to be the same as the truth, but opposite. Devil is a defeated foe, which is and isn't at the same time, just like viruses and parasites. They are inorganic yet intelligent, living dead zombies, but life is in the blood, so in order for them to be manifest in our world is via blood or host. These are some of the thoughts I have. There is always more to the story that we don't know. God will reveal all things. God bless you. I just want to say thank you to Darina for sharing. And then Beast King shared a couple of links. And Vaughn Johnson commented twice and said, "So much to be expounded, sis. If one is not grounded in the word of God, even the elect can be given over to the spells released from these practitioners of the kingdom of darkness." Yes, sis. I believe that's acronym for Spider-Man. Far from home is further indoctrination to get all generations to love magic, sorcery, and the demonic arts. Disney Marvel aim to wrap the minds of generations further away from who God is and to glorify agents of darkness and powers they acquire through spirits, rituals, and ceremonies. So jumping back over into the live chat, and that was a lot, but I would have to agree about, there is indoctrination going on there. I'll say this. When I saw the film, and again, this is spoiler alerts. If you haven't seen it, you may want to watch the stream later. But the idea of hopping dimensions, universes through spells was a bit different, I guess, ever since they introduced Doctor Strange. Now Marvel sort of runs with the magic aspect of everything, but even like with the spell, Peter Parker wanted it modified like 4 different times, and so it messed things up, which caused all of these villains to trickle into Peter Parker's world. And like I mentioned at the end of the video, I believe magic works similarly in the sense that when people dabble in it, they are inviting visitors from alternate dimensions. I don't believe it's alternate versions of us or supervillains, but spirits, demons, fallen angels. They are attracted to sorcery. And sort of like that film, you know, when they come into our world, they can wreak their own kind of havoc. And like I mentioned in the video I did a couple of weeks back, where I had the dreams about the keys, and they're looking for different keys to get in. Obviously, magic is one of the more obvious ones because you're directly dabbling in the occult or directly playing with the dark arts. But either way, there is that desire to come in, and it can really alter things and change the outcome. I also want to say, oh, give me a second. Well, this time I didn't realize that the live stream was private. I thought I was publicly live, so I apologize. I've been going for like 5 minutes talking to myself, literally. So I'll try to summarize everything that I said in the first 6 minutes. Hello, everyone. And if anyone's listening to the playback of this, you can totally disregard this section of recapping really quick. But essentially what I was saying was that this week's live stream is about alternate realities, multiverses shown in the Spider-Man film, as well as what astrologers are saying about 2022 and Pluto's return and how it mirrors America's birth chart of since 1776, Pluto is going to be in the same position, which means some believe there's going to be some type of revolution or financial collapse. And I know people have been date setting for days, and I'm not someone who's necessarily sold on astrology, but I do think there is some truth or things to be observed by the placement of planets and stars and the way they affect the world that we live in. Really quick, I know I read these, so again, if you're listening to this on a playback, you can skip past my recapping of the comments, but for anyone who might be listening live, or maybe I won't recap it just because I don't want to be too repetitive, but if you want to hear my thoughts on the comments from this past week's video, I did discuss it, I just wasn't live. Well, I was live, but I wasn't sharing publicly, so that's why it wasn't heard, so I apologize for that. And I was wondering, I'm like, well, I know sometimes people can be slow to come to the chat, and that's fine. Like I said, if I'm ever doing a live stream and I'm the only one on here, I'll still keep it up. I don't mind talking to myself. It's practically like making a video. But I realized after the fact that it was private, like, oh, that's why nobody probably sees it. But yeah, let's talk a little bit more about this Pluto thing as well, because that's something that I just learned about recently, and give me just a second. So, Pluto is associated, well, first off, it's not considered a planet anymore by scientists. I know for those who believe in a flat earth that planets are kind of their own joke, but we're going to talk planets right now. So Pluto is also associated with death, rebirth, and debt. And this is why some are thinking, because Pluto's returning to its exact placement, that in February of this year, I believe it's the 20th, of course, of 2222, that this is a sign that there could be some kind of shift financially. And I don't think that's too far-fetched. I mean, I think we're long overdue because, let's be honest, ever since we hit the decade of 2020, things have been abnormal. They've been strange. They haven't been what they used to be. It's like once we left the era of the tens of the 2000s, we have no longer seen anything be normal. I remember in early 2020 people making jokes about World War III possibly getting started. And at the time, I was dating a man that was a reservist in the Navy. And so we would joke about, like, what if he had to go fight in World War III? And of course, that didn't happen. But what did happen was a pandemic. And from there, I remember a lot of forests were catching on fire, Australia, Africa, and people thought that was the woes. But here we are in 2022, not much phases people. I feel like you could sum up 2020 with memes. We're just lightly into 2022, and of course, this never ending pandemic with cases that are constantly now near the millions. It's like at first they wanted a lockdown, and now it's pretty much like they're never going to lock down again because they need all of the quote unquote essential workers out there working. But the thing is that the way things are going, it's not sustainable. And we've been talking about a financial collapse for a long time, and we've seen this boom and bust cycle. And I mean, it is overdue. So I don't think it's too far fetched that in after February of 2022, we couldn't start seeing some kind of steep decline financially. I think it's interesting too because when we look at how America was started by rebellion. It was started by, breaking away from the British government. And I was going to say also that apparently that when Pluto returned, it also happened around the time the Roman Empire fell, and we always see these parallels between the United States and Rome. Hello, Evenly Matched 40. How are you doing? I also wanted to throw this out here because I watched The Strain recently, and I know I mentioned it in the last live stream. Some of you, I'm sure, are at least familiar with The Strain, but they also tied in the idea of the Roman Empire and how the quote-unquote Strigoi vampires were present when the Roman Empire fell as well. And they just love to tie the United States to Rome. They love those parallels. But I do think in a way that, we do have vampires at the top. Am I saying literal blood-sucking vampires? Maybe not energetic vampires that feed on energy? Yeah, probably. Are there people who might participate in rituals where they have bloodlust? Possibly. I mean, when you get into deep occultism and you get into sex and blood magic, you start getting people that are into blood. So it's not too far-fetched to think of vampires because essentially I would say a witch at the top would have to be into some kind of blood sport. And I see Evenly Matched 40 said I'm okay. Good to hear you're doing okay. Sorry, I know you're just jumping in and anyone else listening, and like I said, I apologize for earlier. I thought I was talking and I was like, oh, I'm making really good points. And then it's like, oh, never mind. I'm private. That's why nobody can see the live stream. But I'm glad I figured it out before I went a whole hour and was like, well, I wonder why that happened. But I'm glad to hear you're doing okay. There's just so many shifts going on that it's wild. Give me just a second. I'm going to plug this in because I realized that my charger fell out for this computer, and if I don't put it back in, it'll probably die because this was really low when I started, and last thing I need is a laptop dying in the middle of the stream. But I hope everyone that's listening's week has been going well. I know I started off heavy talking about alternate dimensions, realities, and I'm talking about Pluto. Evenly Matched 40 said, what's the thing with Pluto? Okay, so the Pluto thing is that, let me see if I can actually just find an article, because sometimes I feel like my recapping. So I'm going to read this article, and I am not endorsing or agreeing with it. I'm just explaining the concept of it. But this is by bustle.com. So the astrology of 2020 and 2021 was packed with rare and tumultuous planetary connections, like the Great Conjunction and the Saturn-Uranus squares, and the unprecedented global events that took place mirrored the cosmic intensity in real time. While every year comes with its fair share of challenges, the astrology of 2022 has much more hopeful, optimistic, and growth-oriented planet that all the zodiac signs should get excited about. There are some once-in-a-lifetime planetary connections taking place, so the astrological events of 2022 are definitely worth putting on your radar. Is this going to explain? Because I just really want to talk about the Pluto's return. So the United States Pluto return. On February 22nd, the United States will undergo a once-in-our-lifetime and first-of-its-kind event known as the Pluto return. This means that for the first time ever, Pluto will return to the exact position in the zodiac that it was during the United States' inception on July 4th of 1776. It takes about 225 years for Pluto to complete a full rotation through the zodiac, so the Pluto return is an alignment that no human has ever experienced in their own natal chart. Named after the god of the underworld, Pluto is the planet of transformation and extremes. During the U.S. Pluto's return, the country will have to reckon with the intense themes, the dark and power-hungry underbelly of authority and societal structures will likely be forced into the light. It's possible that something entirely new will be reborn. There's no way to know exactly what they'll look like, but as the social movements of recent years have shown, something has to change. So I'm going to jump back into the chat, but that's kind of like a gist of it. So essentially what's happening is Pluto's returning to the same place it was since July of 1776. Now I know we talk conspiracy theories. There was the Illuminati that was founded in May 1st of 1776. Date is, I believe, February 20th of 2022. That's when it all will take place. And it does make me wonder, because like it mentioned, Pluto, mystery, death, rebirth, debt, finances. A lot of people think it's going to be some kind of financial thing that happens in the United States. I will say this, there's been a lot of criticism of how things have been handled by the United States government, and the trust levels of the general population are at an all-time low. And I don't think people are as compliant as the media would want you to believe. So I could really see some sort of shift happening this year. And that is February 20th. Let me make sure. Oh, wait. It said February 22nd on here. Interesting. I thought I saw in another source. Let me see. I guess it is the 22nd, so I guess it is the 222. Okay, so I guess it is... Okay, it is the 22nd. I don't know where I got the 20th from. Well, that's even more crazy because it's 22 of 22. Which is like a major angel number too. Yeah, the 22nd. Thank you for that clarification. Evenly matched 40. Well, that'd be easy to remember. And I saw a meme today that it is the 22nd of February is on a Tuesday, when the joke was it's a Tuesday. So there's something I feel highly symbolic about those numbers. And I don't know if anyone else has any insight on their ideas behind the number 222 or 2222, but it is interesting that that's the day that Pluto also returns and its associated transformation. I know 222 is often associated with partnership within the Bible. It talks about how when God created Adam and then he created Eve, like he put Adam to sleep and he took his rib, and he formed Eve. Adam says, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. So basically, let me make sure I'm quoting right because I don't want to misquote scripture. But Genesis 2:2 is, and the rib which the Lord God has taken from the man, he made into a woman and brought her to the man, and flesh of my flesh, she shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. So that is Genesis 2:22. So I find that interesting. I really like the number 222. That's why I was a fan at least of the of the year 2022, nothing else. But I also think there's symbolism to the transformation idea because I do see things transforming as we know it. Also, speaking of transformations in the economy, I saw that in November, over 4 million people resigned from their current jobs. And we're really facing a turning point where more and more people are deciding that they don't want to work these low wage jobs. And I've been saying this since like August or September, but we really are undergoing like a great resignation. And essentially, what's happening is that a lot of employers aren't going to know what to do because there's going to be less and less people working these jobs. And I do think it's going to cause a higher dependency on automation. Like a lot of these fast food restaurants that teenagers used to take as jobs are being short staffed. A lot of people during the quote unquote pandemic, when they had quote unquote essential workers who got sick or just were burnt out because they were working while there were people at home getting unemployment or working remotely, they didn't want to do it anymore. So a lot of these people quit, and now there's all of these empty, low paying jobs. Plus, a lot of people just don't make enough money to support themselves or their families. People are living paycheck to paycheck, even with a couple or even three jobs. So you have that also happening as well. And the more and more stuff like this occurs, it's creating some form of instability. Evenly matched 40 said also the date for my next back appointment. Not that that's important though. Oh, really? It's 222? Well, that should be easy to remember. Just think of it as Pluto's return and you're back. I hope that your appointment goes well. Evenly matched 40. Hello, Laney109. Laney109 said people also treat essential workers like garbage. They really do, and it's really messed up because, I mean, when America quote unquote locked down, which I would debate as much as people hate it, lockdown, it did hurt small businesses. America never fully locked down the way other countries did, and a lot of people were still able to go out and like go through drive-throughs. Janitors were still working. Fast food workers were still working. People were putting themselves in harm's way, and essential workers did such thankless jobs, and a lot of people don't want to sign up for it. Also, a lot of healthcare workers are burnt out, and there's a shortage of healthcare workers. There's a shortage of teachers. There's a shortage of bus drivers, whether we're talking school buses or public transportation. You have truck drivers who are quitting. There is also a supply chain shortage. So everything is slower, everything is backed up. And even with this whole these whole mandates about whether or not, now they're saying that you just quarantine for 5 days and you're back to work. And a lot of people were upset about it because the reason they shortened the quarantine period and the reason why they made it only 5 days is because a lot of these businesses are already short staffed because people have resigned, because people don't want to do these jobs anymore. And then the few people that are ended up sick, they don't want them out. But like all of this has consequences. Every action that's happening at the top, there's a trickle down effect. And even though maybe those at the top aren't feeling it, they're going to feel it when everything starts collapsing under them. I mean, if a business has less employees, they're making less money because they have less productivity. So there really is, I think, something coming to the ahead is what I'm saying in short. But thank you, Lainey, for sharing that. You're right that essential workers are treated like garbage, and it's really messed up. And Evenly Matched 40 said Pluto will return my back. You know, I would love that for you, Evenly Matched 40. I would love to see, some restoration or healing on that day for you. Laney 109 said, I think my province is the only one avoiding closings. And Laney, if you don't mind me asking, are you in Canada or I'm assuming another country than the United States since you guys are having closings and you said province. So automatically my mind defaulted to Canada, even though I know there are other countries that have provinces. Evenly Matched 40. So when I went to the Apple store today, everyone had to wear a mask. And when I went to other stores, nobody was wearing a mask. It's like visiting multiple countries within a country with its own laws. Exactly. I mean, here's the thing. And I'm not advocating for masks. I'm not advocating for a vaccine. And I'm not advocating against it. All I'm saying is this. America is a giant country with a lot of different opinions. I mean, each region has its own little culture and subculture. But when you have all of these competing ideas and everyone is doing their own thing, there is just no way that things can continue the way they are. And this is why they've been fighting so hard to push these mandates and everything. But the thing is, even with that, like the CDC basically keeps going back and saying like, okay, 5 days of quarantine. Well, you know what? Maybe you do need a negative COVID test, so just do whatever you want. Like, you're telling people to be careful, but yet you're having these giant sports games. You're still planning to have a Super Bowl event. It doesn't make any sense. It's mixed messages. But like what you're seeing, Evenly Matched 40, yeah, like my job, you have to wear a surgical mask into work. But if I go to my local gym, nobody has a mask on except for a couple of people. If I go to my grocery store, most people don't have masks on. It's like different companies are enforcing different rules, but it's all going to come back to bite them because there's all these mixed messages, and you can't run a country where everybody is all over the place. And Laney 109 said somehow our online department did. Give me a second, I'm sorry. I want to say that is 5 million in sales, Canada. Thank you for that clarity. And it might be 50 million because when it comes to counting zeros right now, my brain. And that's wild though. If you have that many in sales. Evenly Matched 40 said it feels like we are in a civil war, but without guns and weapons for now. Yeah, we are Evenly Matched 40. It's more like a intellectual, cultural, financial civil war. And, a house divided against itself cannot stand. That's something Jesus said. And then Abraham Lincoln echoed that. And there's no way things can continue as they are. Like a transformation is evident, is not evident, but is it's gonna happen. It's inevitable, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Hello, Jessica King. Jessica said, I'm in Gulfport, Mississippi. Here they claim hospitals were filled months ago, and when checked out, it was a lie. That surprised me because it was on the local news. That's crazy how they're lying about how full the hospitals were. And Evenly Matched said, you're right, a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. Look at us right now. Exactly. It's a mess. I mean, it's a hot mess. I mean, here's the thing. And I know right now I'm using stereotypes here, but I'm just thinking gendered stereotypes about men and women. A lot of times people make fun of women because like some women don't know where they want to eat. Like you ask them where they want to go and they say, I don't know. And not all women are like that. Some are very decisive. I honestly kind of fall into that stereotype, but that's just because I'm a kind of, I don't know how I feel kind of person. So a lot of times some people ask me, what do you want to eat? And I say, I don't know. And it really is like that most of the time. Like there's very few days where I'm like, I know exactly what I want to eat. But the problem with that is like, if you have a whole nation of people that is, I don't know, maybe, but it's the individualism as well that's really high. So it's almost schizophrenic is what I'm saying. It's almost bipolar how things are going. And it's only a time till it's a slow burn crash. Jessica said, yes, I know local news is part of the machine, but it just surprised me. So here's the thing about mandates. Mandates are not law, so they cannot enforce it without liability, and they will not be liable. And you make a good point, Jessica. You're right. They can't. And I think that's when states' rights come in as well. And you're right. It's just a mandate. It's not a law. And yeah, it's unfortunate that some local news stations still, misrepresent, maybe exaggerate the way things really are going. Lainey said, I'm really not sure what's going on, but I don't think the narrative is correct. I was humbled in 2021 when I lost my dad, supposedly to the Delta variant, but the more my mind comes out of the fog of grief, the more I recall more weird details that seem off. And I'm sorry about your dad, Lainey. I lost my grandmother to COVID. I believe I don't think it was the Delta variant. She lives in Mexico, and I haven't been to Mexico. Well, I went there in 2020, and I lost my grandmother in 2021, but I was not in the same part of Mexico she's in. I haven't seen her for over a decade, but I know there's something going around too. But I agree with you that there is also a narrative that just isn't right. Like the story's not staying straight. Like a good liar can kind of remember their facts and keep the story going, but unfortunately, well, not unfortunately for us, unfortunately for those lying, it's almost like they're forgetting like their lines or something, or forgetting what they said. Jessica said, not sure if you are pro mask or not. Personally, I'm not, but I also feel it's up to us to each choose, so I don't judge those who wear a mask, just saying. And yeah, and I see what you're saying, Jessica. And I agree, yeah, it is up to everyone in the end. I'm just saying that in the end, it's all the mixed messages, I think, is from them lying, and I also think it's just creating a lot of confusion, and it's almost making it's created a lack of credibility. Like a lot of people already call the media fake news, or you know lying or whatever, but now, like, with the story constantly changing, it's like even less reason to believe anything that they're saying. Jessica said that they told us here in the South that if we would all die if we didn't leave the last storm. It was bad, but to say you will all die is beyond me. That's crazy that they told you guys you'd all die. And speaking of that, around the internet, a lot of people on my timeline are like talking about how the White House wished death on them in December. Because I think Biden said something along the lines that all the unvaccinated would be dead, or good as dead by December. And yeah, a lot of unvaccinated people still kicking, doing quite well. And there's a lot of vaccinated people who have not just the one or two shots, but even the who are boosted and they've caught Omicron or other variants. So just a lot of inconsistencies is really what it is. And Jessica said it wasn't near as bad as they made it. They cut our power of when it wasn't windy, so I knew it wasn't about the storm. Wow, and what you're saying too just reminds me of what happened in Texas last year. I had totally forgot about Texas and the whole winter storm that happened, like in the Houston area last January, November, and then Washington had something with the power grid. But even all of that, it was like, we've just been living in a crazy time. Like these last couple of years, it felt like they were written in some kind of movie. Like we used to talk about conspiracies, but now it's like the conspiracies are always happening. And Lainey said, I've kept these thoughts to myself. The doctor spent a lot of time telling me to be prepared because they maxed out his medicines the last 2 hours. Prior, they changed his medicine. He died in 90 minutes. Wow, really sorry to hear that. And the fact they were telling you to be prepared, and how they changed out his medicine, it just seems really suspicious. And I mean, not to sound, what's the words? I don't want to be negative, but like I've had family in the hospital before, and sometimes I think that they intentionally pull the plug, or there are things that could be done that aren't done or might not be at the best interest of the patient. And Jessica said, my mom has declined severely, but we are all different levels of health, so the vax will affect us differently also. And yeah, you're right. It really is going to depend on each person's health. And Jessica asks, you're a nurse, right? I'm actually not a nurse. I do work in healthcare, but I'm on the IT side. And Jessica said, my sister is too. She is pro, but I am not, still to each his or her own. And VPN said, you have a really nice voice. Thank you, VPN. But yeah, health definitely, like what you're saying, Jessica, different levels of health are really going to play a part too in people getting sick. And I don't know if you guys saw this, but now they're around talking about people catching COVID and the flu and calling it Flurona. Like, you can't make this stuff up. Lainey says there was a report that said a week prior they would pick and choose who would get medical care. That is shameful. The picking and choosing. I don't like that at all. But, there is a disparity. And I do think some people are intentionally kind of put down for whatever reason. And I remember actually, someone shared a video with me in 2020 when things were really, really bad. It was a nurse crying, and she was talking about how they were basically killing people. Like a lot of these people who were dying of COVID, they were kind of pulling the plug on them, and it was just really sad. But it kind of goes back to the Georgia Guidestones and the whole keep the population under a certain amount. And, now I just thought about something. The Georgia Guidestones are in the state of Georgia. The CDC is in the state of Georgia. And they're the ones who've been at the center of this whole pandemic. And there's been a lot of people who've died. And, 2020, they were like, oh, it's all the elderly people dying. Now you're having more and more people who have children who are getting sick. And it's just really sad. And VPN said, $500 million? Was that the number they said to keep it under? Give me a second. I'm trying to type here. Thank you for giving me that VPN. But yeah, it's like, what are the odds it's in Georgia, like the CDC? Like, I'm just thinking about it now. Lainey said, after his death, they told me, wait 15 minutes and you can go in. I had to ask them, do I wear gloves? Do I put on protective equipment? They only seemed to notice then. Wow. That is a lot to take in. I mean, especially like I'm thinking about, because, with it being COVID and you're asking and having to wait that amount of time to go in to see your dad. VPN said, I've been studying that stuff since I was 14. I'm 27 now. Impressive. We're the same age. No, but it's impressive you've been studying since you're 14. You're probably way more well-read on it than me. Because the guidestones are interesting, but I have not done a deep dive into it. But yeah, it's definitely population control. It's been a crazy, crazy lifetime. And Jessica said, sorry, I had to restart my phone. What were you saying about some flu? Oh, apparently they're saying, Jessica, that some people are contracting coronavirus or COVID with the flu, so they're calling it flurona, is the new thing. VPN said, back in the good old days when YouTube was legit, right? Before it was bought out and became super corporate. I feel like the reason a lot of people are flocked to like TikTok, I finally bit the bullet and went over to TikTok to see what it's about. Haven't put out my own content, just kind of observing. It feels like it's basically like people are able to be a little bit more free in speech over there than they are here, which is sad because basically YouTube used to be like that, but things have changed so much now. And hello, Kia B. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. And said, right? It's just crazy how everything is changing. VPN said, I'm ready for the alien invasion to just happen already. LOL. People have been talking about an alien invasion for a long time. I guess we'll see this year. And then, like I said, Pluto's return. I'm really looking at it this all because I'm like, I'm telling you, something has to give. It's like things can't continue the way they are. It's like I remember talking about it being a circus in 2016 when it was like the whole elections going on between Hillary and Trump. I remember covering Obama in like 2014 when I got started and all the wild things that were happening. And here we are in 2022. I saw a meme online. It was of Antonio Brown, the football player, ripping off his shirt, and he had that mental breakdown and he ran across the field, and of course they said it was CTE, from his concussions, but the meme was like, oh, I know it's only the second day of 2022 and I know it's going to be retarded, and I'm like, oh god. But I mean, this is a world we're in now, like people ripping off their clothes, people storming the Capitol, whether staged or not. It's like the madness never ends. Like life is just one big meme at this point, but like I said, something has to give. It's like we're standing on a bridge and there's too much weight and it's going to collapse at some point. And it's just ironic that this whole Pluto return thing is happening on 222 and yeah. Lady 109 said they could have blamed prior conditions, but there's the kicker. My friend's husband was healthy and 25 years younger. He died in the exact same way as my dad. That is really strange. Like you said, they've been saying, oh, a lot of people die because their immune system was already low. But, I mean, if you know an example of someone who was an exception to that and they still died the exact same way, it kind of leads me to believe, like, there is some foul play there as far as... And then I've heard people say when people are getting tested or swabbed, sometimes they're getting COVID from the swabs because they have to stick up your nose. Like I've had to get tested before and have a stick stuck up my nose. I've always come out negative from the test, but I do think about people who do test positive and if some people are not intentionally being given it for whatever reason. I know, like, not to sound like a health nut here, but, just because I know the times that we're in, I think it's more important than ever to look after your health, make sure that you're getting your vitamins and supplements in. Like I said, I realized I had a vitamin D deficiency last year, so I started taking vitamin D and K too. I right now mostly on a plant-based diet, little fish here and there. I'm not saying you have to be a vegetarian or vegan or pescatarian, but definitely get more vegetables, fruits, whole foods is the main thing. Whether you're eating meat or not, whole foods, less processed foods will help combat any kind of illnesses. And of course, getting enough sleep, getting enough water, all so important. Health really is wealth in that sense. VPN said it'll happen. Society is being primed for contact. I would agree with you, VPN. They are being primed. Uh, Kiabi said I heard that as well. Yeah, it's crazy. I believe you're referring to the Flurona thing with the double. Yeah, it's wild how things are going at this point. Laney 109 said I don't want to play the race card, but they were both Native American. My father wasn't a social butterfly either. That's understandable that you gave that observation. I mean, I could see it. He's not in the chat right now, but my friend L Cage, he's Native American, and he comes to the chat from time to time, and he was talking about, at least his tribe, they're not taking the vaccine. They live in Canada too. And, I could see it. I know historically, kind of like going back to the whole idea of the Georgia Guidestones, when they talk about, population control, there is different populations that they want under a certain level, and they target certain groups of people based sometimes on your race, your nationality, your religion, even your beliefs or politics. So I wouldn't be too surprised, because it's interesting how some people, like, I think a story somebody told me, he's a Uber driver and he does Lyft as well. And I was talking to him back in 2020, but he told me whenever it was at the height of COVID, like in April or March, he got really sick and he went to the hospital, and another guy was there too. And he managed to get treated, but this other guy didn't. And this other guy kept asking for a COVID test, and he ended up dying. And he's pretty sure that guy had COVID. He thinks he had COVID too, but he was treated. But it's just like, it's just really something. Like I said, the more I look at this kind of stuff, even if you're okay, like, just valuing your health is so important. And Laney 109 said, I'm very tempted to request his autopsy report. I definitely think you should. I mean, it's up to you in the end, but I think it would be helpful in knowing. And yeah, Laney, it really is something, like, I just thought of his story when you were it just came to me now. So many stories I've heard about COVID for so many people now. Now that it's been out for a couple of years and it's mutated a million times. I feel like talking about all of this, I know VPN we're the same age, and I know, like, I'm now still young enough to be young, I guess, but I'm not, like, 19 anymore when I first started. But I feel like watching the world change from 9/11 when I was young to, all these precautions, the war on terror, to COVID. Like, I understand kind of like the war on terror, that things will never be the way they used to be. And that's kind of how it is post COVID, even though COVID's still here and probably will be around like the flu for a long time. And it's like, it makes you so cynical sometimes when you think about it all, how things have altered. And it's like, when I hear people talk about a world, and it's like, they didn't have the war on terror, they didn't have a pandemic. It's like, what was the world like before all of this? Like, I was just about to turn 7 when the war on terror happened. So it's just a really interesting time to be alive, is all I can say. Like kids being born today won't know what normal is like in some ways. Even if they quote unquote end the pandemic, there's always going to be residue left over from it, just like the war on terror. And Kia B said, I feel they would a fixed autopsy to keep the questions in perspective. I don't know, it's hard to trust this stuff. And I see what you're saying about that, like, about that with the autopsy. I mean, you're right. They could say what they want to say on it as well. Um, it's like my uncle, he died last February. He literally died the day after my grandmother died last February of 2021. She died of COVID and he died mysteriously, was like found dead in the water. And they claimed he died of an OD, but it seemed like foul play, but they said there was no foul play in the autopsy. So I understand what you're saying, the skepticism there, Kia be Kia, but I still think, you know, Lainey can observe it and probably figure out from there, determine if there's any possible discrepancies. And let's see, Lainey says I was in high school when 9/11 happened. Yeah, so like you can remember it too. I'm just thinking about like kids today, especially like people born in the late 90s and, you know, if they're born after 2001, they weren't even born when it happened. But yeah, for those of us that remember the world before 9/11, it was a different world altogether. And it's like not the same world anymore. And Lainey said, I thought about that, but I could tailor my questions. Yep, you could tailor them. It's sad that, you know, even with like getting an autopsy, that should be proof. Like, we don't even trust that. Just like we don't even trust the news. Like, we've come to a world where, like, we don't trust anything. Like, we constantly have to have skepticism because of how crazy everything is. And I think that's sad, but I think that's where our faith comes in and where we have to lean on God. And we have to have our own intuition about things because, believe it or not, I've gotten to a point now where I really have trust my gut. Like, I trust God and then I trust my gut. And even when the world around me says something else, because, I mean, the things that we're hearing today, like I said, all of the mixed messages, I mean, how can you really trust that? And hello, I just want to say that. I just want to say that said, hey Daz, did you watch Don't Look Up? I have not watched it yet. I do need to watch it still. Thank you for reminding me and asking me that. Also, I didn't realize we're already at like 8:52, so we have like 8 minutes till 9. I'm gonna go ahead and take prayer requests, and then about 8:55, I'll go ahead and say a prayer, and then have closing comments. And I see Lainey says he was injured during his stay in the hospital. His face was bruised and it puffed up. They claimed it was fluid pooling. That sounds really suspicious. Like, I don't know too much about when people die of COVID, like what their, you know, face looks like when that happens, but that doesn't seem normal that they're saying it's fluid filling up. Dad was faithful man of God. I know he went to be with the Lord. That's awesome. That's always a reassuring thing when you know that, you know, your family member, your loved one had a good relationship with Christ and you know that they're resting in peace. For real, and it's not, you know, you don't have to worry about anything else beyond that. And I'm sorry, Evenly Match for I think I jumped over your comment. You said second grade, I remember. We were in the same grade when 9/11 happened. Also second grade. That was a long, long time ago now. Lainey says still hurts though. I can imagine. I mean, grief is hard and losing someone you love, especially your parents, is hard. I can definitely pray about that too if you want me to, Lainey. Alright, it's right at 55, so I'm going to go ahead and start praying. Father, thank you for allowing us to come together and fellowship and for this time to share our thoughts and fellowship. I just pray that you would Continue to guide everyone, give everyone the peace that passes all understanding. Just continue to help us to draw closer to you and to just heal. Just pray for Lainey to dealing with the loss of her father, and anyone else who's dealing with the loss of a loved one, Father, just for healing from grief and just answers and clarity, as well as anyone struggling with any financial situation, with any relationship issues, whether they're familial, whether they're a marriage, divorce, within dating or friendship. Just ask that you would heal any broken hearts that are listening tonight, Lord. And also just pray for anyone who is in bondage to any strongholds or sin, that you would break those strongholds and just draw everyone closer to you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. I'm sorry, evenly matched 40. Every time I'm praying, I open my eyes and saw it, and I'll add that real quick since I just finished. And also, Father, we also pray for people to have more love and empathy for one another in general. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And I see Kia B. Kia B said, I was having my son at the exact time the first towers got hit. Well, I just want to say, even though that was a scary moment for others, I'm glad that it was an exciting time for you as far as having your son at that exact moment. I bet that had to be something, to look back on. I know birth of a child is a beautiful thing. I'm just thinking about, that would make your son now 20 years old. My mind's still blown when I see people born in 2000, 2001, and they're 20 or 21. I'm like, where's time gone? But yeah, the world it's really changed. And, like I said, I encourage everyone, listening, just to continue to draw closer to God and to really have discernment. And I would say this, it's sad, again, we can't always trust. We should be able to trust, an autopsy, to trust the news we're getting to be correct and to be accurate. But instead, it's we're having to filter it. But I really think discernment doesn't lie. Of course, God doesn't lie, and I don't think our gut feelings lie either. Lainey says, my nephew's going to be 22 this year. Oh, well, are those born in 2000, 2001, 2002, all growing up, it's wild to think about. And Kia B said, yes, it was strange, and he feels a lot of emotions all the time. That's so fascinating. He sounds like an empath. He's very spiritually aware, which is a good way to be, but also, I know how sometimes the enemy too can try to target someone when they're more sensitive to everything as well. High level of intuition. Well, I can't believe it's already 59. It was a good chat and getting to talk with everyone. Thank you, everyone, for chatting and sharing, or for tuning in. I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of their week and continue to stay safe. As always, you guys will remain in my prayers. Take care, and God bless.